Hi, I'm Sarah Sedwick, and welcome to my studio. We're going to see a demo of a workshop exercise of mine that I'm calling Twisted 20s. We're going to do some 20-minute oil sketches, twisting the still life in between each one. I think that's a good way to take our limited palette for a test drive. It's also just a great painting day warm-up exercise. If you've been away from your studio for a couple of weeks and you need something to get yourself back in the groove, if you just don't know what to paint today, but you feel like painting, there are all kinds of kind of just fun little exercises you can do to give yourself a shot in the arm, or just give yourself something to paint when you only have a couple hours to work in the studio or you don't know what to paint. Definitely, I'm not giving myself a real intimidating problem to work on today, and I don't want you guys to choose something super ambitious if you decide to try this at home either. One or two objects, maybe one or two background colors, no plates, bowls, spoons, fabric, nothing like that. Just object, cast, shadow, just a few different color families in the setup is all you're going to need for this. 2 apples, 2 pieces of paper, technically 3 pieces of paper, light source, there's the easel. So I'm really standing pretty close to the still life. But one thing I do want to say about this, because I'm going to be twisting it, I'm going to do 2 20-minute paintings for you guys this morning, and I'm going to twist it in between the first one and the second one. And so to make that easier on myself, I set that still life up on top of a board. So yes, it's on a piece of paper, but there's a drawing board underneath of it, and then it's on a box. So I will just be able to reach under there and twist that board. You can use something like a book also, or just a piece of cardboard to set your still life up on and make it easier to twist it in between. So let's look at my palette. That's a confusing looking mess, right? The only thing more confusing than looking at someone's color chart is actually looking at their palette and trying to figure out what they've done sometimes for me. But this is a limited palette that I mixed up using 3 tubes of color plus white. I've got cad red light, cadmium yellow, and this is phthalo blue red shade. That's an M-gram paint color. Titanium white, and that is solvent-free gel. And I made all of the rest of this stuff from just those 4 ingredients. The first step is you mix out your secondaries. So in between red and yellow, I mixed 3 oranges: yellow orange, regular old orange, red violet, medium violet, blue violet. And then we have these beautiful greens. Whoa, let's put my finger right in it. Next thing you know, that's going to be all over my face. Blue green, regular green, yellow. And then inside that ring of secondaries, I did a ring of tints. So I've basically taken 4 tubes of color and turned it into 14 tubes of color. I also have brown up here in addition to all these secondaries that I've mixed, and that's a tint of the brown. And that's just made from red, yellow, and blue together. And so what are some of the benefits of working this way? Why would I want to go to the trouble of spending half an hour mixing out that palette when I could have just used all the tubes of paint that I have? I certainly have all those colors in the tube. Well, the main one is when you run out of a color that you've made for your still life, you know exactly how to make more of it. When there are only 4 ingredients in the recipe, you can always recreate a mixture. It's just a matter of getting back to the correct proportions. And chances are you're going to have some of all of them in every mixture anyway. It's just experimenting until you get back to those proportions. But these limited palettes also guarantee you color harmony in your painting. You literally cannot make mud if you've only got 3 parents. It's like humans need 2 parents, while color spectrums need 3 parents. And if they've only got 3, you can't create mud. And no matter how many different hues you put in your painting, you'll still have color harmony. But there are also practical advantages to the limited palette. It's less to carry if you're going outside of your studio to paint. It's less to buy when you're shopping, but you're going to need to buy more of the chosen colors. And when you guys decide to try this out, just be prepared. You're going to go through a lot of yellow. Yellow being the lightest value color in the set. You always go through way more. But you also are going to learn a lot and much more quickly about the color set that you choose to use. And also, let's say you get a new tube of paint, a color you've never tried before, something wacky like quinacridone rose or Indian yellow. Not that Indian yellow is particularly wacky, but you never know. Permanent green, chrome oxide green, something wild, who knows. You can put that into a limited palette set with 2 other colors that you know really well, and you'll learn a lot more about it a lot more quickly than if you put it in with 10 or 12 other colors. Lots of advantages. And I go over some more of them in the lesson sheet that I'm going to be sending out with this video. So let's get to the demo. 20 minute paint. So I'm working on Arches oil paper. This is a 12 by 16 sheet. Let me make sure I can see what I'm doing. And if anyone has any questions, chime in anytime. This is Gamsol. Clear Gamsol. Arches oil paper is an awesome surface, but it's very absorbent in the first layer if I don't put something on it first. All right, is someone timing me? 20 minutes. So you do not have to include the block-in in your 20 minutes, and definitely don't include the color mixing in your 20 minutes. Color mixing should take you a little bit longer. And we're going to talk about how to mix down your palette in between the 2 rounds. But if it's stressing you out, and especially, gosh, if you want to take on something complicated like those cantaloupes, which I don't recommend, not that it wasn't fun. It was just a little stressful. I was walking the fine line between fun and stress. I enjoyed the adrenaline, but it was a little difficult. But anyway, the point is, the block-in does not have to go into your 20 minutes. It can, but it does not have to. Oh, there's a lost edge right there. Holy moly. All right, and so very similarly to the kind of block-in that I do when I'm doing my normal 3 stages of a painting, that tonal underpainting, this is kind of like that, but a very abbreviated version. Just getting my big shapes. Good. All right, and I'm not even going to worry that much about getting the whole tonal structure down, but I do want to find my bedbug line. That line where the light side meets the shadow side on both of these objects. And that's the cast shadow. And this is all dark. This is the blue part. Good, lock in, that's it. Where do I want to start as far as applying color? Switching brushes now, moving from a 2 round that I was doing the block in with to a 4 flat. Still not huge, but for the size of the painted area, that's probably about 7 by 7 inches on there. It'll be fine. Where do I want to start? Well, good question. I'm going to start with my light saturated greens. Why not? Now, when you do this, I recommend doing 3, 20, 40, 60, and then maybe with 10 minutes in between to twist the still life and remix your palette. That puts you at about an hour and a half total for the actual painting time of this exercise, aside from mixing up the palette. Or you can just do 2, or you can just do 1. But if you do 3, you can divide a canvas like this into a window pane, 4 sections, 1, 2, 3 paintings, and then the fourth part could be a color test strip, similar to what we discussed last month, or you can just, you know, float 1 or 2 on a page and sort of test things. I worry less about matching the exact color 100% accurately than I do about matching value when I do exercises like this and when I paint with a limited palette in general, because the truth is, with only 3 primaries, you aren't going to be able to exactly match every color that you observe in the world. That's just a fact. But I mean, paint has limitations. So no matter how many colors you have around the outer rim of your palette, you may have trouble matching all the colors you see in nature anyway. It's just the nature of the beast. Paint has limitations. And certainly with only 3 primaries, you're going to have more of those limitations. When you can't exactly match the color that you're observing, you need to default to matching value, hue, and temperature as closely as you can. So if it's a light value, yellowish green, maybe I can't match it exactly, but I can create a light value yellowish green out of the colors that I have. That's what I mean. Match the qualities of those colors. But worry less, especially as you're doing these 20-minute paintings, about matching the exact color, and go for value first when in doubt or if you're struggling. Okay, so I've got some stuff on the light side now. Time to come in and put the shadow side in relation to it. Always be checking in with the value relationships. What's lighter or darker? Sure, this is the light side of the apple back here, but as it comes against the pink background, what's lighter or darker? It's a very light, bright green, but it still feels much darker than the pink that's around it. No. Okay, don't. Now I'm talking to myself. You're just hearing the internal monologue turned on, you know, and running. Don't get too detailed. Don't get too much into putting the details on before you've established the general form. And the general form means light side, shadow side, cast shadow, highlights. Once I get those 4 things established and correct value-wise relative to each other, then I can go in and put on all the little details within that I want. And make fine-tuning adjustments, work on my edges, whatever. Yeah, and also kind of contingent on whether I have any time left over when the... But if, you know, if in 20 minutes all you get is that light side and shadow side correct in relation to each other and working, then good job, you did it. That's all we're going for here. And playing with these palettes that we've made. So I did instruct you to mix up tints for all the secondary mixtures. Sometimes I'll only do that for the violets because the violets are the ones that can be kind of hard to judge. They're so dark sometimes. But so if you mix up tints for all of your secondary piles, it's great to grab from those when you're mixing along with your brush as you're painting. It's fine. You just need to be aware that you're adding white at the same time as you're adding color to your mixtures. Just because we made those tints doesn't mean that that's the only thing I want you to use to paint with going forward. Be very aware that when you're grabbing from those tint piles, you're also adding white to whatever you're mixing it in with. Okay, light side, shadow side of the apples has been established. For the most part. So this is not the same as my stroke economy exercise where I do limited brush strokes, 25 brush strokes, 20 brush strokes, 15 and 10. I've got a couple videos about that. This is not quite the same, but some of the thoughts are the same. Like, don't repaint an area a million times. Try to get it right the first time and leave it alone. This isn't an exercise about painting something and then refining it endlessly, but we are working from the general to the specific. So
10 minutes left.
thank you. Very helpful. Good. So I should move on. And it's good because I've got the form established on those apples. Now I can move. Into some of the other areas of the painting.
Sarah, how much Gamsol are you mixing to make that paint that fluid with your mixtures?
That's a good question. So I did put Gamsol on the surface of the Arches oil paper before I started, and I am adding a little Gamsol to this paint, but more so I'm adding solvent-free gel. It's probably a couple drops of Gamsol, but more solvent-free gel, maybe 25%. You want the paint to be flowing for you when you do this exercise. You don't want to be fighting toothpastey feeling paint. And actually I did put some walnut oil in with my colors when I was mixing out the palette because something was feeling rather stiff to me. The cad red and the yellow were both feeling kind of stiff to me when I was making this palette yesterday. So yeah, this is some flowy paint. I like smooth, creamy paint. I do not like the sensation of painting with toothpaste or that like bulky feeling on the canvas that sometimes happens. So, but I recognize that everyone has a preference. Some people like it stiffer. If you're using bristle brushes, you'll have a lot more of a muscular feeling tool to use with your paint. And you'll be able to handle paint that's a little bit stiffer. But it's a total personal preference thing. So yeah, some Gamsol, but Gamsol doesn't help paint stick to other paints, so it's not excellent for alla prima beyond the underpainting for me. I really tend to stick to mediums for thinning my paint and changing the consistency. Whether it's straight walnut oil or the solvent-free gel, those are my two favorites.
How do those compare to just like linseed oil?
Well, the walnut oil and linseed oil would be really, really similar. So I've mixed up these colors but I don't want to just be filling in areas. Just like with stroke economy, every time the brush goes back to the palette, I might want to think about doing something a little bit different to my mixtures. Just altering them just a little bit for the next brush stroke. I don't want to just be grabbing the same pile and just coloring in. I want every trip to the palette to be making a slight change maybe to the paint, even if I'm just continuing to fill in this one color area. And definitely let this exercise stress you out a little bit. You know, I'm not trying to hurt you, but I am trying to break you out of any preciousness that you might be having about your painting. This is a warm-up, you know, do this on a throwaway surface. Do this on something that, make an agreement with yourself or with me before you start that you are going to scrape it afterwards. Take a photo and then scrape it, you know, just whatever it is, but do something to ensure that you're not going to be precious about this painting. We're not making a masterpiece here. Now, you may find that one of these is real successful and you may want to go back and finish it, quote unquote, after the 20 minutes or after you're done doing the set of paintings. That's cool. That would be great. Or you may find something that you enjoyed so much that you want to go back and work on more, or try in a slightly different way, or just use it as a mine of inspiration. But don't be precious about these paintings per se. I wanted to make a lost edge right here. And I do feel all that blue coming in to the green apple there. How am I doing on time, Gloria?
Ooh, 3 minutes.
Ah!
I have 3 minutes and 45 seconds.
I got this. Slight alteration, maybe warm up that blue as it comes forward. Maybe that didn't work so well. Maybe instead of warming it up, I will saturate it. There. This phthalo blue has not been my friend historically, but now that I have this phthalo blue red shade, I'm making friends with it a little bit more. I kind of like it. It's less of a bully than the traditional phthalo blue. But I've just been having fun trying something other than ultramarine blue, which I think I will always love you, ultramarine blue, don't get me wrong, but it's become kind of a codependent relationship. Every time I come up against a contour line is an opportunity to redraw that contour line. And now with my last 2 minutes, yeah. What do I want to do? I want to do highlights and dark accents. Wipe off the brush and I'm going to just soften the edge of that shadow once. Maybe I'll drag a little bit of that to there. I'm not frustrated. I was just holding my breath. Dark accents. I no longer have the luxury of caring about what color that is, as long as the value is right. Okay. Warm colors are going to feel a lot darker. Oh, this is really dark.
Highlight, highlight.
Uh-oh. Highlights. Highlights. Okay, so I'm going to take white with a little bit of orange in it. Maybe I even need more than that. You really need to load up your brush a lot to put these highlights on. All the paint doesn't go on, but it's like you need a lot of paint on that brush to create the highlight, even if it doesn't all come off the brush, if you know what I mean. Beauty. I have some secondary highlights, some blue highlights from the window, but I'm not going to put those on. And then I will just say where? This is too light, my reflected light right here. Is that my time?
At your time.
Yeah. Okay, well, that's pretty awesome because I'm done. Okay, let's move on and do another one. That was really fun. That was a lot more fun than the cantaloupe, although those were fun too. Oh, I have to twist the still life. So I don't know how. Whoa. Just going to try to get out of the way and twist it. There's no rule for how much to twist it. Don't stress out about it. You could go the whole 180. I don't like that. If you're going to do 4, you can just do like a quarter turn every time. That's the one. You guys see that? Oh, and the other piece before I start again. My palette. I used a lot of this paint. Now I made a fair amount of paint. I used some. This was not a huge painting, that 7-inch square. But you notice what was more useful and what was less useful by what you used up in your first round. And so in between each of these rounds, you need to spend 5 or 10 minutes checking back in with your palette. What I would really like you to do is to mix everything, to mix it down and then recreate your colors. And by mix it down, you can either take all the greens and mix them together into one big green pile and then separate it out into the lights and darks again. Or you can take all your light greens. Here, I'm going to take my light greens that are a blue tint and mix those together. I didn't need 2 different ones anyway. It wasn't that helpful. I'm going to take everything that occurred around my light yellow green, right? Some pink got into it. Some other stuff got into it just because my brush went into it. I'm going to mix that whole thing together. And I'm going to look at my midtones. What happened with the midtones? Like I used that one. It was pretty good, but it was a lot like this one. And I ended up bringing in this blue. Now that all feels the same. I'm going to make that all together into one. I'm going to combine. Your palette is the control panel of your painting. It's like the brain of the painting. And so when I go back into it, clean it up and remix, it's kind of like I walk back through the thought process of my painting. I didn't use that for anything. Gosh, I wish I had yellow ochre. And when you have that thought of, gosh, I wish I had blank, can I mix an approximation of that? I could definitely mix up an approximation of yellow ochre if I just took some brown and some yellow and mixed them together. Hello? Oh, look, it's yellow ochre. I missed you. So mix down your palette. Also check in with your secondaries and make sure that you haven't used anything up. I haven't used anything up because I made so much in the beginning, but you may find that you've run out of yellow green, like if you're doing this kind of subject. And then, okay, so here's my negative space colors. What do I still have left? Did I use it all up? Did I run out? Do I want to make changes? There's my cast shadow color. I really only needed a couple of brush strokes of this stuff, so I still have more, which is great. And the stuff that I made was more or less working. I ended up adding more phthalo blue and some white to this, which is what I made for the light parts of the blue. Wasn't anywhere near light enough, but I did use it for some of that oh, wait, I have some that I had moved. No, it's not. That's my blue violet tint. So I did end up adding some red and adding some white to it. So I'm just going to doctor that up to do with my palette knife what I had done with the brush as I was painting the first 20-minute study. And so when I say that your palette is going to get better between each round, that's what I mean. It's going to get better for your subject. It's going to feel more correct. And the first one will start to feel like it has the least correct color. And that happened with my cantaloupes. I don't know if you can see it back there, but they go from 1 to 2 to 3 back here. And in 1, the colors are kind of garish, I think. I'm not sure how well you guys can see that, but it's bright and very saturated and feels the least natural to me, although I did get some nice greens in there, light greens. And then as I move over to the third one, I think it's got the best color. So it's because I mixed it down each time. And I'm out of white. Great. Okay, cool. Ready for round 2. Clean Gamsol. You ask yourself, maybe, how does she have clean Gamsol? She just did a painting. Why doesn't she have a bunch of slop in the Gamsol? Because on my painting table, I have a jar of Gamsol. And I have a jar lid that has clean Gamsol in it. I clean the brush in the jar, and the jar lid with Gamsol in it is only for dipping my brush into. It helps me pick up only a few drops, but also it gives me clean Gamsol to pull from. I've been doing it that way for years. Okay. I definitely don't need to hold the viewfinder up through the entire drawing process. I really am just going to place my main landmarks. And then put the viewfinder down. That's all I need, right? To show myself where I want to put things. And then I can do the rest without having to look through the viewfinder, because it's like trying to read in a car for me. I'll get a headache trying to draw looking through a small square aperture. Mm. Don't worry that much about composition. This exercise, for once, is not about composition. What a relief. I did daily painting for literally years and did not think about composition. If I got a good one, great. If I didn't, great. I didn't really think about it. I was more concerned with playing with different kinds of subject matter, different surfaces. Just figuring things out. Certainly, looking at this, I think I'm going to move that over just a little bit and whack off maybe a bit there. Doesn't matter. Colors really get even just the slight muddying that comes from my brush going into everything, and then when I mix it down, it makes them more naturalistic. I like that effect. I like what happens through even if it's just working through one painting. you have to kind of constantly adjust and remix your palette. And the colors get better throughout the process of making the painting. All right, so 2 20-minute paintings. And thank you for timing me, Lorianne. I feel that I was held accountable in a good way. So the next step would be to remix the palette again, twist the still life again, and do another one. And after that, either you would be so totally warmed up and ready for a great day of painting, or completely exhausted and ready for a nap. But this is an exercise that you can do, anytime. A couple of hours to go into the studio, and you don't want something so super intimidating, but you really just want to paint today. And also it's really impressive for your friends who aren't artists to say, look what I painted in 20 minutes. All right, guys, thank you so much for joining me today. This has really been a pleasure, and I hope you'll all try this exercise, Twisted 20s. I'll see you soon.